We're joined by our buddy, Josh Pate. Josh, good morning, bud.
Good morning. Let me salute with this hand. Good morning, sir. How are we?
I'm well, sir. How are you?
I'm good. Allergies on a scale of 1 to 10, about a 4.5
Okay.
this morning. Could be worse, though. I've dealt with worse. I've survived worse.
Well, when you come to Texas this time of year, your allergies, actually it's all year, right, Matthew? Wouldn't you say? It's pretty much always bad. Hey, we had a discussion in the last hour that I think I'll throw to you just to get your thoughts on it. What coach do you think will be on the hot seat next year if they don't make the playoffs? So not just be on the hot seat, but they got to make the playoffs to avoid being discussed in 26. And I'm just going to give you one to start it off, just to kind of get your brain going. I think Brian Kelly has to make the playoffs, or his name goes on that list.
Very easily, Brian Kelly. I think that's I'm trying to think. Hold on. I would say, off the top of my head, that's the overwhelming favorite,
Yep.
quote unquote. Now, I'll tell you, there would be a really weird dynamic around James Franklin if he didn't make it. But I don't know that would be hot seat talk. It would be, hey, we've built and built and built, and we had already been at a playoff caliber, and now we have our best team, and we don't even make it. I don't know that. I don't know. That would just be weird. I think you get what I mean when I say that. That would be sort of a weird. It was like the Ryan Day thing last year, when the rest of the outside world looked and said, "Are you people high? You're saying if he loses to Michigan, that alone would be enough to fire him?" And they were like, "Yeah, you don't get it though. Stay in your own lane. You don't get it." I think Penn State people would sound like that, but in the SEC, yeah, it would be Brian Kelly. I think on a somewhat different level, Napier and Venables have to show significant improvement.
Exactly that.
But because of their schedule, they don't have to make the playoff. Hugh Freeze is also that. Freeze, because of the cover that OU and Florida are giving Auburn, is kind of flying under the radar of the, I guess, external criticism a little bit. Now, the fan base is criticizing him, but I think everyone there is willing to have the collective opinion of, let's just see what 2025 brings. Well, that's contingent on 2025 being like an 8+ win season.
I think that Lane Kiffin can do no wrong. Like, if he doesn't make the playoffs this year, he's got enough cachet. He's fine. Like, I mean, they can't go 5-7 without those conversations starting, obviously. But if they go 9-3, 8-4, I think Lane Kiffin has done so good there at Ole Miss that he'd be fine for a little bit.
Yeah. This is going to sound stupid, but this is how college football works. He is safer this year because they didn't make the playoff last year. Had they made the playoff and, done whatever, won a game or so, that would create a new level of expectation there that if he didn't live up to this year, would have people saying, have we peaked under Kiffin? Maybe we've seen the best we're ever going to see, blah, blah, blah. Well, they didn't make it last year. So now they come in this year, workable schedule again. Austin Simmons, who knows, maybe he's a star at the quarterback position. And if they're, knocking on the door of the playoff again, which I think there's reason to believe they will be. They'll be a competitor, at least in that conversation. It's just more of the same with Kiffin, and more of the same is a good thing in this case. But also, David, he has been very, what's the word? Cerebral, shrewd, strategic about making sure his name has been in coaching search conversations. So Ole Miss has had to fight multiple times, perceptionally, to keep him. So you don't fight to keep a guy and fend off the potential poachers and make sure he's ours just to bail on him after an 8-win season pops up. So I agree with you. I think he's very entrenched there.
Here's a domino for you. Mike Norvell has to compete in the ACC after going 2-10. I don't know many coaches that survived 2-10, by the way. We did that discussion. But if Mike Norvell leaves, Lane Kiffin could be the first call Florida State would make. But again, I think Norvell has to get close to the playoffs or make the playoffs.
Yeah. Here is the funny aspect of going 2-10. You could triple your win total and just barely make a bowl game. So I don't know the answer to this question, so I'll just toss it out there. What is the level of acceptability with them? Because it would be true if they won 7 games this year, there would be a lot of positive momentum relative to last year. But if I'm a Florida State fan, I don't forget that last year happened. I'll never forget it. But I am erasing that from my mind in terms of the calibration of the standard of acceptability. That you're not going to go 2-10 and then have me readjust and say, all right, I guess in the future I should be okay with 7.5 to 8 wins on average. No. If I'm paying you an entry-level salary, I'd be okay with that. If I was Florida State of 40 years ago, I'd be okay with that. But I'm the post-Bowden, post-Jimbo FSU. I am someplace that should compete. Hey, man, you got me to the brink of the playoff 2 years ago. 24 months ago, you won the ACC. You took us to the brink of the playoff. So, yeah, I still don't know. I don't know if I don't think he's gone if they win 8 or 9 games, certainly, but I also don't know what the tenor would be, I guess, from the fan base. Are they okay with that? Is that acceptable? I don't even view it as progress, David. I view it as starting over. So I think they're going to set like the first of several plots on the new plot point. I just think they wiped the slate clean. They just torched the entire earth. And whatever they do this year, that's like their starting point.
Josh, all right, so again, to borrow that topic, what SEC coach would survive a 2-10 season? Because I don't think the list is very long. If Kalen DeBoer goes 2-10, bye. Hugh Freeze, bye. Like, there's a lot of coaches. Maybe Sark, because of the last few years, would survive that. But I don't know who would survive in the SEC. I know Mississippi State went 2-10. I'm talking about the teams that have knocked on the door or made the playoffs.
Kiffin's the one who would survive it, because Kiffin's the one who, we just talked about it. You have to have a combination of things. You have to have a ton of equity. So you have to have maximum equity built up, and you have to be a portal-heavy team, ironically. Because if you're a portal-heavy team, you can reasonably explain away, well, we played portal roulette. This particular year, it went bust on us, and that's the risk of going the portal route. Texas, I mean, they've used the portal, but vast majority of their rosters recruited. It's homegrown. Alabama's the same. Georgia's the same. So, I mean, I don't know that those coaches will be fired if they went 2-10, but if they went 2-10, it would be a far more disastrous outcome, because they will have gone 2-10 with their hand-picked players instead of the portal guys. That's like the difference in your car having terminal issues versus a rental car having terminal issues. You'd freak out a lot more scenario A versus scenario B.
Let me ask you one more coach that has to make the playoffs potentially. Mario Cristobal. Do you think he has to?
I don't think he has to, because I think another 9-win season, while it wouldn't satisfy them, would not warrant hot seat consideration. But see, here's the follow-up. All right, so let's say you're a Miami fan, and let's say you said that to me. Hey, Mario's got to make the playoff this year. I would ask you, David, okay, well, what are you saying happens if he doesn't? He goes 9-3. He has 3 losses by 10 points or fewer. What happens? Are you saying he gets fired? And your answer would probably be, well, I'm not necessarily saying he gets fired. And I would say, okay, stop. That means he doesn't have to make the playoff. That's kind of like when people say do or die. Well, okay, if you don't do the thing, are you dying? Because if you're not, it's not do or die. And figuratively, in this case, I don't think it's do or die in terms of a playoff for Mario. But at the same time, I think from an expectation standpoint, if they're not there, then all bets are off in terms of like avoiding the criticism. Because you'll notice, even after last year, I was down there last week. I had him on the show. He said, he didn't say these words exactly, but the general sentiment was we kind of wasted last year's team because we had a generational offense and we couldn't stop anything defensively. And he said it hurt. It hurt because that was made for TV offense, and we lost our way. Those were his exact words defensively. So if they went and made all their defensive hires and they feel like they've got it right, and Carson Beck started throwing, he's going to be full go by fall camp. If you've got all that again, then you should be a playoff caliber team. But I don't want to get in the weeds of scheduling here, but just FYI to everyone, last year's schedule was the one to do business against. This year's is much tougher. They start with Notre Dame out of conference, by the way. But do you know, David, the ACC schedule makers are drunk every year when they make their schedule. Miami's schedule is, I think they've got a bye in like week 4, something like that. They play FSU, then they have another bye. So they have both of their byes in the span of 3 weeks. They close the season. This is Miami. It's important to keep an eye on geographics here. Miami plays 7 games in a row to end the season. Their last 2 games are consecutive road games in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Blacksburg, Virginia in late November. And then if they make the conference title game, that's in Charlotte. That will have been 3 road games in 3 weeks as the 7th, 8th, and 9th consecutive games they play to end the season. So if they do it this year, they've accomplished something.
Josh, another discussion from the show that I just think because it came up, I'll bring it up to you. Does the SEC have a quarterback problem right now? If you look at last year and what the quarterbacks did, and this year with so many newbies, right, guys that are getting new opportunities, compared to what we remember 22, 23 with Jaden Daniels, like, does the SEC currently have a quarterback problem?
If that's true, then I would say college football has one, because I don't see certainty at the position almost anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know what Oregon has. I think I do. I don't know what Ohio State has. I think I do. Arch Manning may be a star this year. Don't know. I will say, like, if you were to look at Bama and Georgia, which have been the 2 most dominant programs over the past decade in the league, I don't think even at their best they have star caliber talent at the position right now. Now, Bama does in Keelan Russell for the future. Georgia's got like Puglisi there, and they've just gotten a 5-star quarterback. So the future you could sell me on, but that's unproven. But just as much as we're talking about that, David, we saw flashes of stardom from Lenore Sellers last year or from DJ Lagway last year. So we could have a season where the 2 best quarterbacks in the league or in the country are in the league. We could have that, or we could have a situation where the SEC's just got a lot of really good teams, but come late November, you and I are talking and we're saying it's the same as last year. There's some good B-plus material in this league. None of them are going to be good enough to beat an Ohio State, fill in the blank, whatever's waiting for you in the playoffs. So I don't know if it's a problem as much as it's maybe an anomaly. It's just a thing. I don't know that it's a problem. I'm not ready to give it the problem stamp yet.
You did a segment on approval rating for several top coaches in the SEC. What do you think Mike Elko's approval rating is?
Yeah, we're doing that one. So because we didn't do Mike the other day, we're doing a 2-parter. So we're doing him the next show we do.
You don't have to answer too much then. Just give me a little brief.
Fine. I need to workshop this with you anyway. So
okay.
I do a 1 to 90. I don't go plus 90. So it's like percentage approval rating amongst just the fan base, not nationally. I'd say Mike's approval rating's above 75%. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would. I would. But you know what? It's interesting, Josh. What has happened with A&M sports in general over the last 12 months? I think everybody is just a little grumpier. So maybe this week that approval rating might be a little bit lower than would have been in February, right? With softball, the number 1 team in the land, losing, baseball may not make the postseason. So and I know they shouldn't affect Coach Elko, but fans allow others things to kind of enter their mind. And this week, I think the approval rating for everybody is a little bit lower than what it may be when they line up against Notre Dame in week 3.
Now that'd be a clickbaitable statement. If I were to blame A&M softball for Mike Elko's approval rating lowering in May, that'll be a good one. That shows some insight into the inner workings of the fan base.
You know what I mean by that, though, right? Like just right now, I think we're a little critical.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Which is crazy. If you were to look at a head coach in football's approval rating and you saw a fluctuation in May, you would wonder there had to be like off the field issues, right? No, it's off the field. It's actually out of his program off the field. But with Elko, I said the same. So I did Sark the other night. I gave him only 85%, whereas the max is 90%. And someone said, why wouldn't Sark be maxed out if Kirby's maxed out? And I said, good question. There is this very, very small but vocal portion of any fan base that if you have all the resources in the world and you've been there more than 3 years, if you haven't won a national title, to that small but vocal percentage of the fan base, you haven't proven yourself. And that same very, very small minority would say, why would I approve of him losing to Georgia twice last year? Why would I approve of us not having a championship? And I think that person would also say, a little erroneously, he would say, big deal if he's acquired a bunch of talent. Texas always had talent. Now, that's a relative statement. Because, yeah, Texas had okay talent. They didn't have the kind of talent they have now. And with Mike Elko, there would be someone totally unfairly, but there would be someone who would say, boy, our defense faded last year. I mean, we were inconsistent last year. Why would I approve? Now, I think that person would be saying, I'm still undecided. I'm not giving him a thumbs down. I'm just not giving him a thumbs up. But in general, yeah, you got to go 75 to 80% for Elko right now.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I like how he addressed the media and put it on himself, right? Like, this defense has got to be better. I'm going to make it better. And
I think, David, don't you think that's smart, by the way, with Mike Elko or with anyone else? I've always found it fascinating when a head coach has an obvious problem, temporary or long-term, and he doesn't address it himself. Because one of the age-old axioms in that profession is people chase you the most when you run the most. Mm-hmm. So if you'll stand still and take something that's obvious and that's going to be pointed out anyway, beat them to the punch. Just be brutally honest about stuff. He's like that. A few other guys are like Kirby Smart's been like that at Georgia.
Yeah.
There's never like a football-based criticism. The off-the-field stuff's different. And a lot of times legally you can't even talk about that. So if you want to criticize that, criticize that. But as far as football is concerned, guys like Mike Elko and Kirby Smart, you don't have to wait for a newspaper writer or a blog poster or a YouTube channel host to point a problem out. They've probably already pointed it out. You're probably reacting to what they said.
I wish Jimbo would have done that more, because there were so many obvious issues, and he kind of, what was it with Bobby Petrino about the play calling at SEC Media Days and all these other things, the offensive line and the play calling. I feel like he never really said, you know what, I've got to fix it. It's on me.
Yeah, and there's another vibe to that. When you're a lifer in football, I think Saban did this to an extent too, but Saban won all the time, so he could do no wrong. You convince yourself that what you're doing is more important than it is. I love football. I immerse myself in it. You do as well. Okay, so this stuff couldn't be any bigger to people like us. But really, in the grand scheme of things, you're coaching a game. And your salary is as big as it is because the entire fandom exists. If we didn't, you'd be coaching in an empty house and you wouldn't be paid what you're paid. And at the end of the day, you're not guarding state secrets. You're not in classified Senate intel briefings. That's not what your staff meeting is. So it's not the worst thing in the world to be a little more open. It builds equity. It endears you to people. That's important, by the way. And it also it goes to show everyone else that you kind of understand your place in the world. Mike Leach was the best in the world at that. He was successful, but he took himself right about as serious as he needed to take himself, and not a step more.
Last thing for you. I saw that Ross Dellinger had the report about the power conferences working on a contract to bind schools to this new enforcement. Then I'm seeing legal experts saying, I don't know if that can hold water. I don't know. What do you think of it?
I'm not a legal expert. I went out to lunch with one last week, and I probably said 10 words, David, and 5 of them were ordering my food. I just wanted him to explain this to me like I'm 5, and he did. And really what we arrived at is there is a lot of gray area. There's a lot of legal interpretation, room for legal interpretation. That's college football. That's life. I think with what we read yesterday, that is loaded. If that's true, that is loaded. And I don't even know how to feel about it yet. I encourage people, we don't have enough time. I encourage people, if you don't know what we're talking about, go read that article. But if that is true, and if they're circumventing antitrust laws by saying, oh no, we're going to have rules ourselves and you can opt into them or not. And if you opt into them, then you abide by our rules, not state rules. And if you don't want in, that's fine. But if you're not going to go by these rules, you're not getting in. Like it's the country club approach. It's very bold. If that happens, at least you got structure. But I of course, you're going to have legal experts, translation, people who've made money off of suing the NCAA. Of course, you're going to have them say it's illegal. It's their way of life. So I get that. What I want to know from someone who gets it, and I don't know who that person is yet, is does this hold water? Because I assume they're not even floating this out there unless their lawyers have said it will.
Right. That's good stuff, Josh. Thanks very much, man. We'll talk to you next week.
I appreciate it, David.
Later, man.